This summer, our family took a 2-week trip to Europe. In our last video, we spent 5 days in Barcelona, then hopped on a 2-day cruise that took us through the Mediterranean and into Italy. Our cruise ship docked in the town of Genoa, where we boarded a train. This train took us over 300 miles across Italy, where we could see the countryside, the ocean, and small towns. At some points, it traveled over 110 miles per hour. On our first evening in Rome, we headed out for pizza and gelato. Then we took a walk down past the Colosseum to let Blake and I play some basketball with some great views. It was fun to see the Colosseum in real life. It was amazing to see all of these ancient structures lining the city streets all around us as we walked. The first thing we noticed was just how seamlessly the ancient remains, some of the oldest things we'd ever seen, fit in perfectly to the modern city of Rome. On our first full day in Rome, we wandered all around the city, first stopping at the Pantheon to get a view from the outside without the crowds. We then hurried to the Trevi fountain to beat the tourists, but even at 8 a.m. there were tons of people there. We fought through all the tourists taking selfies and enjoyed seeing the magnificent fountain fed from aqueducts. The boys threw a coin over their shoulder in hopes of returning to Rome one day. We then visited the Spanish Steps, which are 135 steps built in the 1700s near the Spanish Embassy. After that, we spent some time in the Borghese Gardens, which is a large public park that houses monuments, playgrounds, museums, ponds, and more. It also has a beautiful view over Piazza di Popolo. In the afternoon, we visited Piazza Navona, a large public square that is built on the site of a previous stadium that hosted chariot races 2,000 years ago. On the day we visited, they were having a festival and the kids enjoyed getting to run around and play with the local kids.
After lunch, we braved the really long line to enter the Pantheon, which ended up moving pretty fast, and we were excited to finally enter one of the most famous and best preserved monuments in Rome. It is over 2,000 years old and is still the largest unreinforced concrete dome.
For breakfast, we walked to the Jewish Ghetto and ate at Pasticceria Baccioni, a kosher bakery that has been run by the same family since 1815. The area of the Jewish Ghetto was peaceful and without most of the tourists that we had been encountering. It was established by the Pope in the 1500s. In 1943, the Nazis surrounded the neighborhood, capturing 1,000 of its residents, and only 16 survived extermination at Auschwitz. There were many small brass cobblestones which are called stumbling blocks, which represent the name of an innocent person taken from their home and the specific details of their death. They are meant to help people reflect on the tragedies that took place here. After this, we took a stroll over the oldest bridge in Rome, Ponte Fabricio, built 2,000 years ago and connected to Tiber Island. Once in Trastevere, we grabbed coffee, wandered the streets, went in a few beautiful churches, then grabbed a snack at Supli. This afternoon, we took a tour of the Roman Forum, Palatine Hill, and the Colosseum. It was amazing to walk in the footsteps of the ancient Roman Empire and see where they lived, worked, and gathered for over 1,400 years. Many of the buildings were constructed almost 3,000 years ago, and many were destroyed in the 5th century when the Roman Empire fell. The enormous Colosseum was constructed in just 8 years with the help of 100,000 slaves. The Colosseum could seat between 50 and 80,000 spectators and over time hosted battles that resulted in 500,000 human deaths and 1 million animal deaths. This morning we toured the Altar of the Fatherland, a huge monument in the middle of the city center, dedicated to Victor Emmanuel, the first king of the unified Italy. We were able to visit the very top of the monument, where we could see far into the distance, at the more developed Rome, and overlook the ancient city that we had visited yesterday. Next up, we visited Campo di Fiori, which means Field of Flowers. It was a market with many vendors selling fruit, pastas, souvenirs, and of course flowers. It holds a bit darker history, where in the past served as a public place for executions and book burnings, but now serves as a popular daily market. We spent some time at Castel Sant Angelo, a huge cylindrical building right along the Tiber River. It was initially commissioned by the Emperor Hadrian as a mausoleum for himself, but was later used by popes as a fortress, a castle, and now is a museum. During the afternoon, we took a tour of the Vatican City, the smallest country in the world at just over 100 acres. It has its own flag, has its own national anthem, and even has its own post office. Vatican City has about 800 citizens, mostly cardinals, Swiss Guard, and other clergy members. It became its own country in 1929 when the various territories of Italy decided to unify. When this happened, the Pope lost a lot of power, and when they would not recognize him as the first king, the Catholic Church fought for their own independence. In the 1800s, for over 60 years, popes refused to leave the walls of the Vatican. Italy allowed this to happen, but made a deal when tourists could still visit the impressive museums on tours. This tour included the Vatican Museums and the Sistine Chapel. We saw famous works of art like the Raphael Rooms, Tapestry Gallery, the enormous School of Athens painting, and Michelangelo's Last Judgment. We learned a lot about the impressive fresco work that Michelangelo created and were amazed and impressed at the Sistine Chapel. We really enjoyed our time in Rome, but now we're headed to Istanbul.